your hand in the air if you have had quite the exhausting and quite the crazy week when it came to professional wrestling. I mean, think of all the things that we see over the last few days. I just keep waking up in the night going, ha 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 ha. Everyone's like, Simon's really crazy. Don't know why I said everyone. That's like I share my bedroom with like 82 other people, but you don't know. I absolutely don't. But my name is Simon from WhatCulture. Thank you for joining me as always. And we end the week, kind of not really, because we'll be back at the weekend, but we end the week part of the week, don't know what I'm talking about, by looking at Impact Wrestling and seeing what they're doing and deciding whether the good bits get it up and the bad bits get it down. You then disagree with me in the comments. We then make up later with a hug and a kiss. It is a lovely, somewhat crazy relationship. Let's up those downs. Rosemary versus Tasha Stills kicked off Impact Wrestling this week, and of course Savannah Evans was in one corner and Havoc was in the other corner, and this all ties into the fact that Tasha Stills is obsessed with the Impact Women's Tag Team Championships, and she desperately wants them back by hook or by crook. I don't really know how you do a crook. And look, this was all fine. This was all good. I mean, Rosemary was on top for a little bit, but then Tasha Stills fought back, but then Rosemary was so beaten up, she was trying to hit a spear, but she wasn't able to until she did just hit a spear and get the 1, 2, 3. But ultimately, the issue I'm having with this is that I'm just not really connecting with it with one reason or another. Given that Rosemary won here as well, I was like, okay, well, maybe that's the end of this feud, but it wasn't because Savannah Evans just wrecked everybody afterwards. I think Tasha Stills kind of stole the championship belt, so that's going to be interesting. But I just think this needs a little bit of something else, because we had all this nonsense with Fala Bar or whatever the hell that was. We just seem to be going around the houses as opposed to taking a really cool narrative and throwing it into everybody's face. So again, it's tickling on nicely, but it ain't there for me, so it's getting it down. Scott D'Amore as well. Honestly, this guy does not care, because Ace Austin was being interviewed about his big upcoming match for the world title against Christian Cage, and he was like, you damn right I'm ready. I'm Ace Austin, and I'm the future of this business. He then saw Scotty, so he was like, Scott, come over here a second. Madman Fulton just so happens to be free, and I looked in your calendar, and Christian Cage is also free, so I think before I do indeed take on Christian, we should do Madman Fulton taking on Mr. Cage. Now, he was of course doing this because he wants his buddy to beat up Christian before they have a match, and Scott D'Amore went, well actually yeah, there is a good idea within it, but I'm going to take it and change it into a 10-man tag that we'll do next week. And I was like, where the hell did that come from? Ace Austin spent no time trying to recruit people either, because he saw Brian Myers and went, hey Brian, do you want to be on my team? And Brian said yes. So honestly, we started off here and we ended up on the moon. Brian and I was then getting flubbed up too, because we had another one of these backstage vignettes with Violent by Design, and they were just saying a bunch of creepy and weird shit to him, because of course they blame their recent losses on the man beast. And really when you watch these, the only thing you can come up with is that Eric Young et al. Are just a bunch of weirdos. I mean, what are they talking about? What are they doing? And how can Impact Wrestling officials like Scott D'Amore see this and go, well, we're just gonna let it happen? Somebody needs to call HR. We then had a bunkhouse brawl. Always fun to have these kind of stipulations on a random television show, especially when it was Rich Swan taking on Karl Anderson. And while people like to laugh about the PWI 500 saying, oh, who cares about it? Well, I care about it, and I would presume if you're a wrestler and you find yourself in it, you would also care about it, because why the hell wouldn't you want to be included? My point being, I thought it was awesome that Rich Swan was in the top 10 this year. That man absolutely deserves it. This thing was also wild straight off the bat, because Rich Swan was so pissed off that the Good Brothers had put Willie Mack in the hospital, he was just getting a bunch of weapons, and he was trying to take out both of them. He didn't give an absolute crap. This worked for a while, but it was also a dumb strategy because Mr. Swan forgot about wrestling maths. If you are one person and you're trying to take on two people in a wrestling ring, eventually it's going to catch up to you. So while he was focused on Gallows, Anderson just tonked him from behind, and here came the badness. From there we had bits of wood, garbage cans, and who knows what else, but it also kind of was responsible for the match turning into a go, 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 go affair. The Swan hit a standing splash, Karl Anderson hit a spine buster, and then he wanted to go for the stun gun, but he wasn't able to, so Rich Swan went for a 450, but he missed. Honestly, this just picked up from nowhere. I kind of felt like I'd accidentally pushed fast forward. The ending was a little bit horrific because Gallows decided he was bored of all this and he set up a table which allowed Anderson to stun gun Rich Swan through said table, but the damn thing didn't break. And honestly, the whole point of tables breaking is that it helps you fall, so if you just go flying into it, well, clearly it hurts more than going into the ring. This, of course, did mean that Rich Swan lost, but that's okay, because now someone's going to have to come and get revenge for him, and my guess would be, it will be Willie Mack. This was good though, this. It was entertaining, it was joyous, it was fun. Sometimes that's all you really need. Sit down with Mickie James afterwards, and she's getting serious now. She's no longer just the NWA producer, because she is sick and tired of Deonna Purrazzo being an absolute piece of trash, so now she's going to turn into wrestler Mickie James and absolutely whip her ass. I have every confidence they will have a very good match, because they are very good professional wrestlers, and because we were talking about Deonna Purrazzo, the very next thing we saw was a video with Matthew Raidwalt, because of course they're like buddies. He was drawing and doing some paintings, but ultimately he was just calling out Trey Miguel, and I think we're going to do that match next week. And when it did come to this art, like, I'm not saying I'm a connoisseur, in fact I'm a stupid heathen, I don't know what I'm talking about, but if it was meant to be Trey Miguel, I think it was very good. Josh Alexander then said smart things. You damn right. Because he is heading into his big X Division match with Chris Saban, because of course Chris Saban has been walking around saying, I'm an 8-time champ, I'm an 8-time champ. So Josh said, okay, cool, you're an 8-time champ, but that also means you lost the belt 8 times, so what the hell will you play that? Alexander also got involved in the whole Team Cage versus Team Austin stuff, because Christian popped up and he was like, hey bro, do you want to be on my pack? And he said yes. And that's actually a very good pick. When you go through the MVPs of the year, Josh Alexander absolutely has to be a contender. I don't think he's had a bad match. Rohit Raju then refused to apologise for everything he had done to Chelsea Green last week, because he was like, deep down, Chelsea just wants to be treated like a real man, especially because when it comes to her fiancé Matt Cardona, who is anything but, and you can get the rest and put it all together. I don't really know what's wrong with that though. If Chelsea Green is kicking ass, and Matt Cardona is like, well, my lady friend is kicking ass, I'll let her kick the ass, I think that's perfectly fine, but of course Rohit Raju is an absolute jerk. So you're meant to hate him. And I do. David Finlay and Chris Bay were then back on Impact, and they had a good match. This, of course, is a continuation of all the Bullet Club stuff that has been happening in Impact Wrestling, and clearly Chris Bay has been watching Bullet Club stuff, because before this began, he refused to get in the ring, and he just stalled and stalled and stalled until David Finlay was like, I'm sick of this, I'm coming to get you. I think Chris hoped this would serve as some kind of distraction, but that didn't work, because they got back in the squared circle. Dave Finlay whammed him with a senton, and then he had this idea that he was going to do a plancha to the floor. Chris Bay moved, meaning David Finlay went into the floor. I hope Daddy Fit rings you up and tells you off. Obviously, Chris then went after the back, because I'm sure it was broken into 1,000 pieces, but unfortunately, his ego got in the way, because he was like, look at this chump, I can hit the art finesse whenever I want. He didn't really go for it with the guts, so he should have done. That allowed David Finlay to apply the STF, and if Chris Bay hadn't got to the ropes, I bet Jay White would have come out and been like, man, you are an absolute disgrace. Bayley decided to cheat much as he had done recently by putting his feet on the ropes, but Juice Robinson saw that. He pushed them off. The referee had no idea what was going on, which allowed Finlay to hit the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment, the surprise roll-up, and get, if we're honest, a very deserved win. The Forbidden Door was then swinging open again though, because New Japan's Hikuleo was here, and he absolutely wrecked Finn Juice. I mean, he killed them like they owed him some money. He also Pillmanized Juice Robinson's ankle, so I suppose we're going to do something there. And of course, he's part of the Bullet Club, so they really should have taken care. But I enjoyed this, because again, I just love that flipping door. Kind of weirdly, we then cut backstage to see a contract signing between Chris Saban and Josh Alexander, and I didn't really understand why we hadn't done this earlier, but who cares? This was very gentlemanly though, like, oh, good match, I look forward to fighting you. This was mostly done because then Christian popped up and he said, hey, Chris Saban, would you also like to be on my team? Josh Alexander's probably not going to be very happy about that, but he had left by this point, but of course Chris said yes. He's just a mega super doopy babyface. Just the most random, bizarre nut stuff happened after this in Swingers Palace. And I swear, every time we go there, it's just like entering a very, very strange reality. Because TJP filed a bar and no way entered, and TJP decided that he was going to bet on Steve Macklin because he was about to take on Petey Williams. And then from nowhere, No Way kind of got into it with Hernandez. All the time this was happening too, Kimberly was in the background just being an undead zombie. My eyes were like this. I couldn't even blink because I was afraid if I did, I may miss something, and as it was, I couldn't make heads and tails out of it. Now, as I always say, fair play and respect to Impact for doing this stuff. They like it and they always go with it, which they should. But I, Simon Motherboard A-hole, who is employed to review wrestling stuff on YouTube, it just goes right over my head, which isn't very hard because I haven't got any hair, but it's just so baffling. So much so, I don't even know how to relay it to you. So I gotta give it a down. Turns out TJP is a very good gambler though, because it was then Steve Macklin versus Peter Williams. Steve Macklin did indeed win. This was well thought out as well, because Macklin has been destroying random fools on Impact for ages, but he was gonna need a proper name sometime to prove, hey, I'm here in Impact Wrestling, and I've got the chops. P.T. Williams absolutely fits into that category. I don't need to say anything else because I've already explained myself. It was wrestling tennis constantly, which made it even better because, of course, Steve Macklin was going for power, but P.T. Williams was going for speed. And for a little while, we were proving that speed would overcome power because P.T. Williams was just flipping around the place. After he had done one particular flip, he also thought, haha, I can do the ultimate flip now and hit the Canadian Destroyer, when I think we got the most random distraction of 2021. Because TJP Bar and No Way came out and they were doing the whole conga thing, wiggling their tushes around, and P.T. Williams, he could not believe this. It was like somebody had put him in a cannon and shot him up to the stars. He totally forgot he was in a wrestling match, so Steve Macklin blasted him from behind and he pinned him for the 1, 2, 3. And I was like, somebody just lost because of a conga. Now, I don't want to take away from the core of this match because I was enjoying it. I thought it was very well put together, so it is going to get an up. But that is a distraction too far for me. You know how I feel about them anyway, and even if it did make you chuckle a little bit, which I could understand, sometimes it's just too much. Down. Cool segment with Eddie Edwards afterwards, who was getting ready for his match with Moose, because Sami Callihan approached him and said, hey man, I still think we should be a team. I think Eddie Edwards threw up in his mouth when he suggested that. He doesn't want to do it. Someone who thinks this would be a great idea, though, was Christian Cage, who once again popped up and said, well, why don't you both join my team? And why Sami Callihan was up for this. Eddie Edwards was like, did you not hear what I just say? If you want him, you're not getting me, but if you push him aside, sure, I'll sign up. So that was good because it ties into their history, but better still, it also ties into the end of this episode of Impact. And I tell you, the company did a great job with that, and I'll talk about it in around about 2 minutes. This was doubly true because then Moose and W. Morrissey found out that Sami Callihan and Eddie Edwards may be on that team, so they went to Ace Austin and said, if this is correct, you need to employ us because we want to kick those guys' asses. So look how much we've got going on here. People are feuding with different people. We have multiple storylines that are all leading in one direction. It's pretty hard to do, and it's pretty hard to pull off. It also set up our main event, which was Eddie Edwards versus Moose, and never forget that these guys have had beef before, so now it was back to the beef. It started super stiff, like they were both trying to knock each other's heads off, and after Moose had snapped Eddie Edwards' arms in the ropes, he was like, oh, that's cool, I've just come up with my own strategy, I'm gonna try and tear it off your body. Morrissey was on the outside and he kept sticking his oar in, even though months ago he told us he doesn't like friends, so what a hypocrite he is, and at one point it seemed like they were gonna outdo Eddie Edwards based on the numbers game alone. But this is Eddie Edwards we're talking about, the ultimate babyface, and he started to fight his way back. Because there was this awesome lariat when Moose then tried to follow it up with his spear but missed, so Eddie hit the BKP, and just as it looked like he was going to win, that damn Morrissey grabbed Moose's foot and he put it on the ropes, and I was disgusted. This pissed off Edwards for obvious reasons, so he decided to dive onto the wrestler who can't be taught to be as tall as he was. But once again, as I'd already established during this episode of Ups and Downs, do not be distracted if you are a professional wrestler. It is just going to go bag. So he got back in the ring. He'd almost forgotten that Moose was even a human being. He got speared. And he lost. This then triggered a huge brawl for everyone that had decided to be in both Team Cage and Team Austin, and they ran to the ring, and there was this great bit, because at one point it was Josh Alexander who was standing tall. This is what we should be doing, continue to push him to the moon. Austin and Fulton were then out to try and put a stop to that, but Christian and Eddie Edwards were able to balance the books. But then Moose and W. Morrissey were back, and they started trying to kill Eddie Edwards, before from nowhere, who ran out to try and save her husband? It was, of course, Alicia Edwards. I was like, man, I don't like where this is going. As it turned out, though, this allowed Sami Callihan to then arrive at the ring. He saved Alicia Edwards, and I was like, man, whoever called that one coming, given what we was doing a few months ago. And of course, this allowed both Sami and Edward to fight off everybody before Edwards decided, well, you know what, because you've done that for me, I'll now do something for you. I'll be in Team Cage. So that, my friends, is really good pro wrestling and a great way to tie everything together. And it meant Impact this week ended with Team Cage celebrating and going, oh, we're going to win, which of course they won't. You need Ace Austin to win because he's not going to win that title. And once again, that's just how sports entertainment works. But I tell you, I was very impressed with this up. And it also means that I say the same thing that I say every week, and I will continue to say it every week until I die and fall into my grave, because apparently people are going to be really nasty to me after I am gone. Impact just does its thing, and Impact is always really easy to watch. Now, please do leave a comment below and let us know what you thought about last night's episode of Impact. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Head on over to WhatCulture.com where you can stay up to date with the wrestling news, and there's so much you won't believe it. Make sure you come say hello on social media and watch all the ups and downs videos, because I said so. My name's Saban for WhatCulture. Thank you for joining me as always. I will see you soon.